Okay, I got my mixture screw and I got that little O-ring on there. Off camera, I had to go get a couple of picks out of the toolbox, and that's going to go in there just above your anti-diesel in your solenoid and below your bypass. And go on the net and just search, and there's a lot of good VW tech articles. A lot of guys are playing with the Volkswagens and carburetors, and these things hadn't changed. It's real easy to get information on the net. So I'm going to lightly seat this, very lightly, so you don't hurt it. Right there, and I'm going to come back 1, 2, 2.5 revolutions out from the lightly seated position for the mixture screw. And my main jet had fallen out of the basket and was in the bottom of my parts cleaner can, so I had to go out and get that. Just make sure it's clean. Make sure it's clean. And drop that in. And it just about falls right in. And screw your main jet in. And those are little brass jets. You know, when you're jetting, you may need to go richer or leaner depending on your engine, but not a big deal. They're cheap. Okay, then we got our fuel drain plug with a new red gasket out of the carb rebuild kit. Just make sure you snug it down so you don't get any fuel leaks. Okay, and now we have our idle circuit, which on this carburetor, you see how nice and clean that is. Almost looks like it's been polished, but that's from just sitting in that chem tool. And there's a plug. I'll go ahead and put the plug in first. Right here is a plug. It's just a plug left over from them drilling the passageways in the carburetor. And let's see if I can put it in without dropping it 3 times. Kind of trying to hold it so I think you can see from the camera angle. Taking me slow time, but anyway, run it in, lightly seated. And then this is your idle slow jet. And most of the time, these are fine. There's not a whole lot you got to do to them, as long as they're clean. And I've had them where they're not clean, and I've run a oxygen acetylene torch through them to clean them, as well as carburetor cleaner and everything else. Okay, so we got basically our body together, all new parts, circuits. Don't forget about your vacuum. I run a Bosch 009 centrifugal advance, so I do not use the vacuum ports. So plug them off. A lot of people will just get an old vacuum hose and stab a screw in the side of it, and you know that works poor boy. But you know, I'd rather go down and spend $2 and get some vacuum tight caps. That way I know they're not coming off. This one ain't going on either, so I know it's not coming off. I'll have to pull that back off and maybe put some soap or something on there later. Okay, now I got the choke on top. I'll go ahead and put a new gasket down. And this is putting a new gasket down, making sure that this is the right gasket so all my important holes line up. Okay, and my top, I already put the new needle and seat in. Oops, and you know what, I'm getting ahead of myself. Need the float. And I've already checked the float height on that. and make sure that that does not go like that. It needs to go there with that curvature back, or you'll run into fitment problems when you go to put the top on. Okay, new gaskets, the vents open. My air correction jet, I forgot that. That's the air correction jet, and it lives right there. And again, that's all clean. Blew it out with cleaner air and compressed air to make sure that there's no plugs in there. That just needs to get a light seat. Okay, now I believe I'm ready. Go ahead and go on with the top. Five screws on the top. And I go ahead and put the top on, and then I'll take care of my choke and choke pull off. And you know, it's just pretty simple stuff, but run them in there loose. If you run one tight, you'll always have a difficult time getting the rest of them lined up. And it doesn't really matter too much, but if I've got it, I go ahead and I keep the carburetor ID tag. I don't know, I guess this thing is from the 70s, so it's 40 years old. Cleans up pretty good for 40 years worth of dirt sitting in that Chem Tool carburetor cleaner. Okay, I'm going to speed this up and talk more than do. But the last thing I do is adjust the electric choke, and it's pretty simple. You got a bimetallic spring in there, and this is your choke circuit right here. And I gotta remember, right, you got a plastic, no, you got your choke pull off first. Okay, that's the old choke pull off. You can see some deterioration. Here's the new one from the kit, and I always like to match up side by side. And you notice they're a little different. That's got a little deal there and that doesn't, but you know, no big deal. I'm going to put the diaphragm in there, making sure your vacuum port is open. Which I can't do and talk at the same time for obvious reasons. I'm not going to put this together on camera, but you know, the reverse of assembly is just the reverse of disassembly. But that's your vacuum choke pull off. You got to cover with a spring, and that's your vacuum. That'll come in there and it will pull out, and it'll grab your spring, and if it is on, if your choke is set, and once it warms up, it will pull it off to normal operating position versus the choke on. And of course, you know what this is. You got your bimetallic spring in there, and that spring hooks right there such that you hook up your 12 volts, and when you're cold, you know, it activates your choke, and you got your cover plate with your 3 screws. And the main thing is just make sure you don't have a hole in there, that your diaphragm line, your vacuum line is free, and put it back and make everything line up. which I gotta go and get this bracket underneath there. Alright, I'm gonna put this thing back together, get me a fresh base gasket, slap this on, and make the final adjustments, and hopefully run happy ever after.